call the meeting to order, please. Slide that up, pass that on around from me, please. Everyone should have your packet of information, the updated agenda. Are there any other items that we need to add to the agenda? If not, can I have a motion to approve the agenda as is?
Sure. We adopt the agenda as is.
Second, please. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Very good, thank you. May we go out of order if you all okay with that? We have Councilman Brown here with us and some other people. Councilman Brown, I thought was sitting on there. He has asked this group, you all been remain aware, and I think I shared with you already, I know I did, the flock presentation. And so he has Officer Chief Weathers and names of some of the other officers with him. You can introduce them, please. They wanted us to review the flock camera presentation. It was approved yesterday for the expansion, but the purpose was to elicit any questions and get feedback that we might have or concerns to report back to Chief Weathers and his staff as far as implementation. So, Chief Weathers.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Lawrence Weathers, Chief of Police. I have with me Assistant Chief Eric Lowe, Assistant Chief Roger Holland, and back here on board, Flock Safety Program Commander Matt Grayhouse. Thank you all for agreeing to hear us out. I wanted to be here simply because there's a lot of misconceptions about what this, it's not a program, it's a product. And I think some people are getting confused with, hey, this is a program that's supposed to take the place of violence prevention type of programs, but it's absolutely not that. It is simply a tool for us to help us, assist us with some investigations, and those investigations could be locating missing or endangered people, and or trying to find vehicles associated with criminal activity, or trying to recover stolen cars. It's just a way for us to get information, and it's a more modern way for us to do it. We try to put as much information on our webpage as we can. We put some numbers out there to show people, you know, what the product's capable of and what it has done for us. So when it comes to looking at comparison statistics, this is not really what this is for. So it's a product, so we're looking at the performance. So we don't look at comparison data, how things happened before, as opposed to before we got this, because I'm not giving up stuff that we did before. I'm using this in conjunction with it. So what we put on there is what we're using for performance data. Does it work the way it says it does? And the numbers we get back implies that it does. So that's where we are now. I didn't know how much you all knew about it. I know there's been a lot of news, but I wanted to ask first, before we start the presentation, what are some of the things you know about it? What are some of the concerns you have about it?
I think it's working well. I've been keeping up with it on the news, and the statistics are really impressive, so I'm fine.
And I know, I mentioned our webpage, and that's, we're trying to be as transparent as possible. We entered into the pilot project simply because 25 cameras were free. That way we could see how it worked and not really be out any money. We knew, just from doing our product research like everybody else does, you know, you look at your Amazon and you see how many stars it's got, and you know, well, you look at some more to see how many people rate it, but we go further than that. We call people, we go visit other communities that use it to see how it works. So we thought, man, if it works the way it says it does, we might have to purchase it. So we asked the council, to set the money aside for this budget cycle in case we had to. One of the hiccups we ran into when we first got to 25 was a delay in shipping them. So that's why we went to the council and said, hey, can we have this money ready just in case? Because we knew that the pilot project would go into the next budget cycle. And if we decided we wanted it before that, we had to have the money there in case there was still that delay. Now I'm being told there's not that delay anymore. Of course, it's 3 months, but I guess that's kind of normal. You know, and that'll put us closer to when, well, it'll put us closer to when, if we do it now, it'll put us closer to when we started. We got our first camera in March. I think it was roughly how many months later when we finally got them all installed.
First one went in about the second week of March, and then our final ones went in about mid-August.
So in our pilot program, didn't start in August, which was good for us, because that means we got the use of those cameras a little bit more. You know, we gotta be kind of thrifty when we're doing stuff. So that's where we are. That's where we are when we approach the council about spending money. Anticipating, hey, 3 months out, it'll be March. Right when we did it. If there are some hiccups or stuff in there, it'll be enough time for us to maybe adjust the current budget cycle. So, if y'all don't have any other concerns.
Yeah, well, for me, it's always going to be a concern how, and I realize, you know, I'm all for any tools that help make safer and better, but a lot of times it's the implementation of these things that end up being detrimental to things of color. Also, why not stick with the 1 year the pilot program wants to collect more data?
We are sticking with the pilot program. The pilot program is not collecting data for us. It's collecting data for the National Police Institute.
It's a national study, so what they wanted to do is they wanted to look at the effectiveness of license plate readers across the nation. So the National Police Institute partnered with Axon, which is the company that does our body-worn cameras, to do, it's a study is what it is. So they're going to do the comparative of what did crime look at beforehand, what did it look like after, and then they'll do the study of the license plate readers in locations across the country. So that's the 1 year. The 1 year is the study. A trial, as you would from this vendor, is normally a 90-day trial if we wanted to try out the technology and see if there was something that was successful. Which, so the 1 year wouldn't have been a trial from that. The 1 year of the 25 cameras is a study that's being done nationally. What we saw from talking to other cities using similar and the same technology is we thought there was a possibility that we were going to start using this tool and see very quickly that it was effective. And there's two ways to look at effectiveness. One is a long-term comparative study of looking at years beforehand and years afterwards. And it'll take time to collect that data and have a true looking at a long term of how successful was it. But we thought if we were seeing short-term performance data that we saw was being used to the advantage of our investigations and victims in this community, that we may believe this is a tool that we want to be able to bring to our community sooner, which is why we requested and the council approved to have the funds there in case this was a tool that we thought was going to be successful. In the short term, it's very difficult to show, here's a full done study. I know you have been involved in a bunch of studies. You're not going to be able to show a study that has years of statistically significant data in the short term. But what you can see in the short term is you can see performance that's working. You can see investigations that are furthered by the use of the tools. We've seen crime solved that we don't believe that there would have been another way to have solved the crime without the use of this tool. We're seeing the ability to get property back to people much faster than we have in the past. A good example of comparative data. You look at what was the percentage of stolen cars we recovered before this tool and after the tool. It has changed some, but it hasn't changed significantly. the reason for that is most stolen cars get recovered. They're a trackable thing that gets abandoned. They get found by tow truck drivers in parking lots and stuff like that. Most of them get recovered. It's how long does it take for them to be recovered? So just in the short term, we've seen, looking at the last 3 years of data, we looked at 2020, and we were averaging, it was taking, the average recovery of a vehicle stolen here in Lexington was about 10.5 days. 2021 was the same, 10.5 days. When looking at 2022, it's dropped significantly. It's at about 6.5 days in 2022. When you further that down and just look at the months that we've had the license plate readers installed, and some of those months there was 2 readers installed, it's dropped to about 5.5 days. So I mean, we're seeing a 50% reduction in the number of days it takes to recover a stolen car. The last 2 months, it's been 2 days. So, you know, we've actually been looking at trend lines and seeing a significantly reduced duration it takes to recover a stolen car. And some people think, well, that's just a stolen car. One of the things that we know, one of the prime mechanisms that is used in perpetrating crimes of all types, shoplifting, violent crimes, homicides, are stolen vehicles. You don't want to drive to commit a serious crime in your car. You drive in a stolen car. So our ability to recover stolen cars and get them off the road faster, we see many benefits from that. We see that we're taking away the tool that they're using to commit those crimes. And we're also getting them off of the road, reducing their ability to commit those crimes. So it's that type of performance data. We hear from detectives about how much faster they're able to solve their crimes with the use of the tool. Sometimes we don't have cooperations. Sometimes we have people that are completely cooperative, but we don't have something to go on. We may have, I saw the vehicle, it was a red Ford and it drove down that street. That's not a lot to act on. But with the addition of a tool like this, where, you know, they're saying it was a red Ford that went in that direction, it gives us 2 things. One, if we have a license plate reader in that area, we can narrow it down to, it's not a red Ford, it's this red Ford. And with it being this red Ford, one, it gives us an investigative lead that then we can speed up the investigation and look at who was involved with this red Ford that perpetrated the crime. Another benefit we see is there's a lot of other people in our community that are driving a red Ford that, without a tool like this, are, you know, a potential suspect in this. And we're looking at all of the red Fords in the area as being potentially involved in it. So not only are we developing a lead that we can use to further investigation, we're excluding people that weren't involved very, very quickly from you know, being involved in that crime. So on very short term, we're seeing performance data. We're seeing enhanced investigations. We're seeing services being provided to victims and getting their property back and solving their crimes, that we feel that we need to continue to look at this, and we need to continue to see how effective this is. When initially looking at what we thought was the right number of cameras for a city of our size and the crime we're experiencing, we believed that it would take more like a number of 100 cameras to be able to provide the coverage that we needed, which is why we made the budget request to move up to the 100 cameras. So what we've seen on the short term with a limited number of cameras, a quarter of what we think we need for adequate coverage of the county, we're seeing successes. So that's why we wanted to move forward and continue to evaluate the program. You know, just because the agreement was signed with the mayor last night doesn't mean it's a forever project. It's a funded project that has to be continued to be reviewed by groups like this, by the council, to continue to look at how are things going, what are the performance metrics, and continue to evaluate, is this a product that the city of Lexington wants to continue to invest in. Sorry, I just grabbed that.
Can I ask a follow-up question to that then? Because, you know, you provided data, now it's my turn.
Absolutely.
So I just want to reframe then Whit's question from the data perspective, right? Because all data, particularly inside of any type of machine learning or AI, is inherently flawed, right? Any type of product is going to have flaws. So even when you're collecting that performance data, is there performance data being collected for the OOPS to help close gaps? If it's part of the study, what is the study doing to measure things that need to be changed, corrections that need to be made in order to enhance the development of the tool? Because I think that's what I hear him framing in the question, is how do we make sure the tool itself isn't delivering the positive bias response, and that the studies being collected aren't delivering a positive bias response, but that we're looking at the holistic data around, yes, it closed those gaps, but you know what else? We also made these assumptions in that process that caused some other ramifications.
But I think nationally, that might be difficult to do, but locally in some communities where you have different variables to look at, I think you can do that here. That's why it's important to have it really on a yearly basis. So you can look at and say, you know, if you get in there and find out that it's causing community damage, then you need to get rid of it. I don't know if you can pick that up nationally, but you pick that up here, and I don't know if you can pick it up with just 25. If you pick that out, you'd be able to pick it up, because 25 cameras is not a lot for the size. So a lot of things will escape by that. Right now, you know, I don't have anything that shows that, hey, it causes it. Once I spread that out, I may be able to see that, and I may be able to pick up on it before a year. So, I mean, the national study is one thing, the local review has to be part of it. And for us, you know, our policy, which I think you'll go over some in your presentation. Some, yeah. Our policy tries to offset that as well, just because of some of the things that we've come up against that we've seen in policing already with that one.
Sure. But I think that's what I hear, and please would correct me if I'm wrong, but from a researching question, I think the question is that data going to be sought to be collected?
I would think it would be. I would think it would be. I don't know, I haven't asked them what exactly they're looking for in their thing, but I'm sure they're gonna wanna market it.
Sure.
So I would think every community that attempts it or wants to buy it is gonna be asking that.
Are we asked, so to that, are we asking that? Are we asking what do we know from the company? Are we asking how do we collect this data?
When they collect that data, that will be a question that we ask. How do you know that it's not biased? And that, you know, just to be one. We ask that of every product. So some people have brought us and framed us in a program. We've looked at it. You know, the people that your program or product affects, 98% of the people are calling. I got a problem with that. And that's what I don't know if you'll be able to look at it with this, because this is not look at me. And that's one of the things that attract us. It does not look at me. And I don't know, still very slow.
That's what calling it. I'm sorry.
Question, as far as two questions. Number one, what's in pages 1 through 34? Yeah, I noticed on the page numbers it says 35. That's probably a tricky question, but
that was, I printed this from the council work session packet when they presented in October.
Okay, I just need to inquisitive self. It starts on page 35 or something. Secondly,
It's just your packet.
I have one 30 through 34. You done?
Allocation amount. You mentioned funding from the council.
36 or 37,000.
I think 236 is what. So we had put a funding amount that would make sure that we would have enough, and I think the cost for, correct me if I'm wrong, the additional 75 for the 1 year was going to be 236,000.
Change, yeah, 236 and change. The additional 75. Chief Brothers, I have a question, please. Just based on this was reported in the news, talking to always cautious as they're talking to a lot of people, but talking to a few people. It seems the biggest concern has been the placement of the cameras and throughout the pilot, and a general concern that they're placed in areas or neighborhoods that are already heavily policed. So what is the rubric without the information that Dr. Wright was suggesting that want to identify any false positives or false positives, what you call it. That's right. Kind of close it.
Yeah.
This could come out. But what is the rubric that will be used for placement of these additional 75 cameras?
So you're just going to come on over here. Because I got paperwork. Sure. So for the placement for the original 25, what we did was we looked at violent crime across Fayette County. We worked with our planning analysis unit that provides crime statistics, and we worked with Flock Safety themselves, did a heat map of what the crime looked at, and we looked at areas of Fayette County were experiencing significant levels of violent crime. And then looked at crime placements in those areas, because we're looking for traffic. We're not looking for dead-end streets or stuff like that. We're looking for how do you get in and out of areas. So I would say that they're more in throughput areas of how to get in and out of areas where we're experiencing crime. And so we looked at, with only having 25, where do we think we would get the most bang for the buck, and put them on the map across Fayette County. Here's where we think that they should go. And the first step was looking just at where we saw reported crime. This is an enforcement action. It's not where arrests were made. It's not where traffic stops were. It's locations where victims told us a crime happened. And then we had the same concern that people have brought up is what communities have we chosen to put the cameras in? So we thought it was important to do an analysis and take a look at it. So after we had chosen the locations for the initial 25, we tried to determine what's the best way to judge the demographics of those areas. And we just had a census, so we had 2020 census, which is perfect. It's broken down into 82 different census tracts throughout Fayette County. So we took those 25 locations and we went to the census map and said, which census tract are each of these cameras in? And so the 25 cameras were placed in 18 different census tracts. 18 had one each, and then 7 had 2. So that got us to the 25 different cameras. And so then we did a comparison of the census tracts where we had placed the license plate readers, and how does the demographics of those census tracts compare to the demographics of Fayette County as a whole. And so what we saw, the census breaks it down into white alone, so just white, African American alone, a single other race, or 2 or more races. So those are the categories that it was broken down into. In looking at Fayette County as a whole, the population reported by the 2020 census was 68% white. And looking at the census tracts where the license plate readers were placed, this is on our website, you can look at it, you don't have to write it down. Those census tracts was 59.7% white, the census tracts where the LPRs were placed. African American in Fayette County is 15%, and the census tracts where the license plate readers were placed was 20%. Another single race, or 20.7. Another single race was 9.7% in Fayette County and 11.6.5 in the census tracts where the LPRs were placed. And then 2 or more races in Fayette County is 7% and 7.89 in those census tracts. We posted that information on the transparency page, so that is there for anyone to look at. Those, while they're not exact, they are roughly in line with the demographics of Fayette County. And then looking and doing that, we thought that was an appropriate way for us to just kind of do a second check and make sure that we aren't putting the license plate readers in neighborhoods that are, out of proportion with the population of Fayette County as a whole. We have a preliminary set of locations for the 100 cameras. It isn't complete because we have things like permitting, and is there appropriate cell phone coverage? Is there appropriate solar coverage before we can say this is the absolute definitive location where the 100 the license plate readers are going to go. We've went ahead and with the preliminary locations, did the same analysis that we did before about the demographics of Fayette County, and they fall, excuse me, pretty well in line. As I said, the population of white only is 68%, In the new locations, the license plate readers that with the white population increased to 61.4. The African American population, 15%. It's went down about a half a percent to 20.5. The other single race reduced from 11.65 to 7.7, and then the 2 or more races stayed almost exactly the same at 7.86. So with the expansion of the additional license plate readers, it's basically just spreading further coverage throughout the county. The demographics of those stayed pretty much the same. It actually increased the ones in the white population. Any questions about that? And those additional, once we have finalized the location, we'll update these numbers and then post those demographics on that website as well.
I have a couple of questions. So 25, 300,000 people, I had a conversation earlier. That doesn't seem like a lot. So 100 should be more impactful, right? Then 500 is really impactful. And then 1,000. At what point, or is there a cutoff to say when are we going to not be a surveillance community? Like, what's the magic number? Because to me, it's going to seem like more cameras should be better, but is it? You know what I'm saying?
Well, for us, 100 was the magic number for us. We looked at intersections and pathways into the city and thought, yeah, we'll put cameras. Here's what we put. This was before all of this, and we got up to that number of 100. Yeah, to me, the closer you move them in, the less effective they become, because you've got different avenues of travel in and out. What you want to do is you want to put them in the places where you can probably capture the most of it in and out. You probably pretty much figure where those streets are going to be. It's going to be the major arteries into town. You know, when we're looking at vlogs sometimes, I-75, Chester Road, that's where people come in at, coming down Richmond Road. I mean, that's where you're going to see it at. You know, Circle Road is going to be it all the way around. That's where people travel the most at. It's not really looking at neighborhoods, because that's not really effective for what we see. But when we start placing them, you're going further out and widening it, and it just didn't seem effective to us to start coming in. So 100 kind of ended it for us.
Next question. I'm always think upstream, everything I do, prevention. How can this be a prevention? I understand that it's used as a closed cases help solve, but prevention.
Sometimes with prevention, you never know what you're preventing. Like, if I stop a stolen car and it's got a stolen gun in it, the person in it won't be able to do. I can't. There's no way I can track that. I can quantify that. I do know that everything that anybody tries to do is a reactive thing, and you always hope for prevention. For law enforcement is always primarily reactive. But even the patrol that we do is reactive, and you hope that that's what's happening. You see an officer driving around all the time, maybe that will deter somebody from committing a crime. So all of it has an element of prevention. And really, if criminals feel like they're going to get caught, they may not commit the crime here. They may go to Georgetown, although Georgetown has flaws. But I mean, that's what we're looking at. And I saw it even when we were on patrol without this, doing some of the drug stuff that we did. You can see street sales in one area. If we focused on that area, the street sales would shift. So, and then sometimes if you do it on a much broader scale, it would just die down and stop altogether. So anything you do has a prevention component to it. So this this, it probably has the same prevention component to it too. And we saw that even with the 25. When people would steal cars, they usually maybe call it joyriding or driving around for a little bit. That stopped. It was still his car. And there were people out finding our cameras and marking them down. So let's not go this area, let's go this area, do what we gotta do and then dump the car. You know, so with more, it's probably gonna be, there's too many out there. We don't know where they all are, and even if we do, we can't escape. So maybe this ain't the right place or right time or right thing to do right now. And that's what you hope for. I mean, I talk to the fire department, they talk to the agent all the time. But if people don't follow the rules and don't do things, bad things happen. So you always hope for prevention, and there's nothing out there that is really going to guarantee that it does. And the sad part is, really don't know. They're trying to stop it. Stop because they didn't act.
Any other questions?
How many, so you said earlier, you decided to go with this, looked at data from other cities. How many other cities did you all look at, and how did their data compare? Were the cities comparable to our city size, our demographic makeup? Did you look at 5 cities? Did you look at 100 cities?
Compared to data. We started investigating flock whether we were going to want to go with the pilot program or with the National Police Institute. We contacted, I contacted several different cities. Fort Worth, Texas, Memphis, a couple places in California, which name is escaping right now. And they have been keeping data the best they can for a long period of time. Memphis specifically, I think, had had cameras since 2018. And they had seen a dramatic drop in the car on the ground every year. They had the cameras up to include 2020 and 2021. They saw a drop in the ground, and that's in Memphis. And I think they're a good test case because, well, we talk about 100 cameras. I think they pay for right around 100 to 150 cameras for Shelby County, which is the county that encompasses Memphis, but they have access to like 2,500 cameras in that city. And so that's how impactful the other partnership with other people in the community. They have access to those other players who are able to solve the problem around because of it. As far as the comparative data, we didn't ask, I don't think we specifically asked what it looked like beforehand and afterward. We didn't ask that specific data because it was part of this Police Institute study that we were going to be a part of. But every place I talked to had said, without a doubt, that they did help solve the crimes and did help drive down their crime rates.
And that's October, like the International Association of Chiefs of Police Conference. And of course, they had a lot of presentations down there. So I got the opportunity to talk to the Dallas chief and some of his command staff. And I can't remember how many officers they had, 1,600 or whatever. They were buying it. They already placed them out in their city. It worked so well. They were going to put it in their cars. And I think there's some places down there in Louisiana, and we were just talking around, and they were talking about, there's a police shortage. If I could, I'd put an officer on every corner, put it in DC. But technology's moved beyond that, and we don't have to do that anymore. I know everybody is worried about privacy and all of that, but these aren't video cameras. They just take pictures of license plates. That's all they do. Just take pictures of license plates. And when an officer gets the picture back, all it has is a picture of the plate, the back of the car, and what the car is, what the car was in, or if it's a stolen car, or there's an Amber Alert or associated with that. If you want to find out any more information about that plate, you probably got to be a sworn officer. There's already restrictions on what you can run that for. So that's the only way you can get additional information is be a police officer, and you run that plate and that information comes back to you. So if you're not entered in, we would never know you were in that area. We never know anybody before
So just to clarify, the way in which it works, the vehicle's coming, there is nothing ambient being captured other than the license plate.
It's the back of the car.
Well, yeah, the back of the car, because you get the color.
Okay.
Step further, I got the scenario. I drive down the same street, she drives the street, she drives down the street, her car is stolen. It doesn't necessarily capture that, hey, Christian went down there. It captures
It captures her plate.
the plate, and you know that plate went down that street, that stolen car went down
I
that
wouldn't
street.
know it. I wouldn't know it. It wouldn't be an alert. Your plate number.
Okay, but it'd be alert when she drives by that camera.
Well, her vehicle,
Her
we don't know
vehicle.
who's in it.
Yeah,
okay.
Let's be clear on that. So when we take a picture of the vehicle, you can't tell who's in the car. You can't tell how many people are in the car. It's just literally a picture of the back of the car with a license plate. That system is passive essentially. It sits there and it's doing its thing. It's capturing the license plates in the pictures, and it just keeps going until it cross-references and checks with the National Crime Institute or information computer, which is stuff that we've had since the 70s. And that's where if your car is stolen, we're going to fill out a report. It's going to go in. It's going to say this car is stolen. Any other time, an officer would have to know your car is stolen, or just happen upon it in a circumstance, run the plate, and they're like, oh, that thing's stolen. This now says, oh, by the way, your car was stolen and it was over here. So it gives that officer a directed time to, instead of driving around the city of 300-some thousand bedtime population, and says, there's a pretty good chance that stolen vehicle is probably in this location. We can't tell who was in it or who was driving it at the time necessarily unless we stop them in there. But all of us, if we were on that same street, we can go back and see if you're there, but we don't have a reason to go back and look for that. There's no investigative value to go and find out who else was on that street. We're looking for one specific thing, and that's criminal activity. That's all we're looking for, and that's all it does look for.
Where does that data go to that my picture of my car was taken? Who keeps that data? What happens to it?
It's kept in a secure cloud location and a flock storage location, and it stayed there. It's stored there, for 60 days, and then it's erased. So if your car is stolen, same scenario. If your car is stolen today, okay. If your car is stolen.
Why don't you want to steal my car?
What do you drive?
Why don't you want my car?
All right, to make it equal, if everybody's car is stolen, and it's entered today, 61 days from now, if I had to go back and try to find that vehicle, it's gone. I can't find it. The beauty about the system is that if I go back and look for it, every time I make a motion in that system, it records what I'm doing, what I'm looking for, and what parameters I put in every single time. So if I put in, if you're ABC 1, 2, 3, and I just put AB in, it records that. If I put ABC, it records that. If I put ABC 1, it records that. So every time I backspace or go in or out of the system, it's logged, and that is kept forever. So any officer that gets in it from any location that has access to that system goes in and it is logged. So if there is a report of somebody not doing what they're supposed to be doing, essentially not doing their job and using the system inappropriately, we can go back and find it. You can't hide that. There's no way you can get away from your mouse clicks and all that stuff. So that's the beauty of the system, is we're able to go in and look for specific criminal activity. It alerts us only when criminal activity is afoot. And if a vehicle is listed, whether it be a violent crime around here that we would enter our own plate for, or an NCIC crime. And that's it. The rest of the time, there's capturing millions of images a day, and nobody knows any different. Nobody goes and looks at it.
And one of the requirements in policy is that when an officer is alerted to a stolen vehicle or a wanted vehicle or a missing person or whatever it is, they're required by policy to confirm that the tag on the car that they're seeing is the one that they're looking for, and to go run the car on their computer to confirm that it is in the NCIC database as stolen. So they're not allowed to act just upon the hit. The hit points them in the direction of then using traditional law enforcement resources and their eyes to confirm that, yes, this is the vehicle that we're looking at before they take any type of enforcement action.
So other images that are captured, they will be used for probabilistic data to suggest that a vehicle that came before or after could not have been, or possibly have been involved in a crime or the theft?
Yes, if I can understand your question correctly. So if a crime occurred, we're going to take the stolen car off the table. Say a crime occurred on your street, and you were in an area where one of the LPR readers was. We can go back and query that system in a specific amount of time to see if a vehicle passed by there. Once again, that is just an investigative lead. It doesn't say, hey, your car was on that street, you committed, or your vehicle, who was driving your vehicle committed that crime. We would then go back and say, all right, what about Ring doorbell surveillance videos? Does somebody have this car in there? Does it show somebody walking inside your house? We would gather all that other information. This is just a very small tool allowing us, instead of essentially a whodunit, somebody showing into your house, for instance, and no witnesses, no video. This at least gives us some investigative capability to go, well, these 4 cars were in that area. Let's just see if they maybe pawned something. So we can then go through our investigative computer to say, well, this person just happened to break in or just pawn a stolen computer that happened to be yours with the same serial number. Well, that's a clue. We're like, all right, well, that car was in that same area. We probably ought to go talk to that person who pawned this and say, where did you get this and how did you get it? So therefore, it allows us to be very expedient in trying to solve that crime, instead of just, well, maybe somebody will call in a tip one day, or maybe now we have to go pull video to find out who brought their computer in, and so on and so forth. It gives us just an extra investigative tool.
So it does collect video?
No,
Oh.
no, I said references, we would then cross-reference that with other information. For instance, surveillance video, or Ring doorbell camera, something like that.
There's a business or something.
Yeah, we would continue to do our same investigative techniques we've been doing before this. This just allows us to point in a specific direction and focus there potentially first, and either eliminate that person, that vehicle and or person, and we'll move on and say, yes, this was the person.
Who has authorization within the department to access the system? Is it a specific law enforcement personnel be authorized?
Sworn.
Not just like, or everybody can get into it, or?
There's certain levels, but every sworn officer has access to the system.
And the policy, certain reasons why they should get in there.
Yes, and they have to list a reason why and you have to list a reason. So it is required that you have to list a reason in there. So we would flag, in our audit would catch if you put in, like, I'm looking for my wife. Okay, that's a little bit different. We probably ought to go look at that. But most of the time they're put in for burglary and a case number. So we know that they're in there for that specific reason. Even if they lied about it and we found out later that maybe they were lying, like I said before, that audit trail's there so we can go back and find it. That's never going away.
So those are safeguards that y'all put into our policy. Correct.
Yes.
So those are the type of things that I think that, that I'm concerned about, and I think other folks in the community are concerned about. And those are the guardrails that this tool needs to have.
And speaking of access to the system, so any sworn police officer with our department can go do a query and use an investigative lead. The ability to put a vehicle on a hot list where we would be alerted to a vehicle passing by a license plate reader, we have put a level of supervision in that to where officers don't have the ability to add vehicles to hot lists to be able to be alerted. That has to go, there's a form that they fill out with a request that goes to the intelligence unit, where they vet that and determine, is this a legitimate reason for us to put this on a list where people will be alerted to this vehicle? And then the intelligence unit will vet that and then either approve or deny that. So that is a process that we have in place that I don't know of any other. I don't think anybody is putting.
Most allow just anybody to put their stuff in there. We choose to be more restrictive and
There's
put
2
more
layers.
safeguards and more layers of supervision in this because we know what the concerns are. We want to make sure we come out.
So to Councilman Brown's point, if I'm correct, isn't that supposed to be like you all are having an update about 75 whenever you start implementing those?
Yes, sir.
I think that needs to be made known. I think that would help to eliminate some of the concern throughout the community because they don't know that necessarily, because I had not heard that until just today.
The accessibility of the system and
Right.
how it's broken up.
Right, and that's confident to me, because you just can't put my license plate on there.
It's in policy.
It's in policy.
It's written in policy.
Well, but I think that.
Yeah, but we can
as
point- we
part
can
of
highlight
your
that, sure.
update, that should be, that could be just a normal part of your update to assuage some of the concerns that the community has about, in particular about overly policed areas and how it could be detrimental to certain ethnic groups and so forth. And
As a point of reference, everybody has access to the system, but I can assure you that not everybody is using the system. We know that. We have it underperforming, and essentially our high users are our low users, and they're really not even. So it's one of those that not everybody has access, but not everybody's using it.
You mentioned a website about transparency. For us as commission members and people that are listening, like how can we assist you all in getting the right information out? Like where do we send people to? Not everybody's going to get this lovely presentation.
So on our website, so on the city's website, you can go to lexingtonky.gov/police, or you can navigate to it through the departments on the website. Then over on the right side, there's a set of common links, and one of them is transparency. And if you click on that, we have information on a variety of topics. We have information on our body-worn camera program. We put links to presentations we've given to council. We've got a page specifically on license plate readers that has the demographics of the census tracts where the cameras are. We created some frequently asked questions that you can look at. Our policy is there. We put our first audit there, so we'll put the audits there for people to look at. There's a section on our discipline policy, our discipline procedures. It's on the transparency page. So you can see formal complaints that were filed, what was the resolution, and when everything's done, we put the summary up there that you can read. So there's a lot of information that's on that transparency page.
Is there going to be a push to educate the community on? Because I've heard all kinds.
Oh, well, I kind of thought we were doing that as many times. We went before the council and public safety committee. But you know, as I saw people come in there talking about it, there are some misconceptions about how we're using it and what we're using it for. So I think we're probably going to have to sit down and kind of try to ferret out what it is we need to say to people. My whole thing is, when I was up there, I was like, this is not a program. You know, it's not something that's going to take the place of anything. It's a tool for us to use, much like all the other tools that I had, and it's based in technology. You know, an officer right now is going to play anytime they want to in their car. So it's not anything new. It's just that you can't be everywhere at once. This is a force multiplier for us. When I was talking to somebody today about the technology, it's like, you know, forgive me because I'm a little older. But when I used to pay bills, I'd sit down and write checks. I still sit down and write checks. But now, now I use my bank. and I go through my bank, and it's just much easier. You know, I got auto pay and all that kind of stuff and all of that, but you know, there's something about writing a check to my church. I kind of want to say that. But the point is, I still do things the old way, but technology helps me out, and that's what this is. We still do things the older way. You know, it's like we don't knock door to door still. You know, even with the Ring doorbell, people want to email us their footage. They can do that, but we still knock door to door and ask. So this is just new technology. Follow guidelines, Supreme Court issue about there's got to be an area where you don't have any expectation of privacy. So the areas in is intersections where the police would be or could be and run your tags. So those are things that we do to make sure we're not infringing upon people.
Okay. So we've spent a lot of time discussing what our purpose is as a newly formed commission. I don't always really know, right? Because we're still working through that. But the piece of it is about advice. And I think what Christian is saying, what Whit's saying, what Councilman Brown's saying is, as you seek to communicate, not only in ferreting out the information, but where are you going to deliver that message so that it is more accessible to people, because coming down here is not always accessible. If you choose to or not to, that's fine. But I think that's the intent of the message, not just what you're communicating, but how are you getting the message out there? And it's not the tool itself, right? And I think between last night watching the council session and then all of social media today, I think the lesson was learned that it's not being heard. And it, like you said, it's not a program, it's a tool, but the tool, it's not the tool that people have concerns with, right? It's the implementation and use of said tool. And that's the part where they want to understand the transparency piece of how exactly is it being used and what is the intent
And
of
that's
the collection.
the hard thing for us not to get across, but, you know, social media is the devil. And, you know, I sit in that council and I heard people say, they're putting these cameras in predominantly black areas. So I'm like, no, we're not, you know? It's on our webpage about where it is, but people don't navigate to that. So I think one of the things we have to learn as a police department is where are the most common places to go to get this information out? Not government pages, that's for sure.
I think it's neighborhoods. I think it's communities. You need to have.
And that's one of the things that we do. Yeah, now since COVID, we got a lot of neighborhood meetings. And when I was talking to Ms. Fogel about it, I was like, you know, all the people I talk to see want more. We don't even want more. we want something that's manageable. She said the people I talk to don't want it. So I'm like, okay, you hook me up with your people, and I'll hook you up with my people. Because she needs to hear the other side too, and I need to hear the other side. So that's how we work that.
No, I think the relationship piece, you know, with people of color, marginalized community, African Americans, et cetera, and police, you know, that's the great divide. And that communication piece is very important. Because it's like, right now you said, you know, the police can run license plate anytime. And so perception is, why would you run, you know, license plate if you can run it anytime? So if you can run it anytime, humans, along with flawed technology, you know, that can always be specific, and that creates the air of distrust and lack of faith. So I think your job is to, I mean, growing up, I remember we used to have like officer friendly, you know, not the little books, you know, officer friendly with da-da-da-da. But of course they also said, you know, slaves were frolicking at picnics. So I don't know how true that was. But I always had that concept before I started being afraid of the police, because where I grew up, is that, you know, you all come to the community and meet people where they are, explaining no matter how much touch. I like the idea of you saying, yeah, put me in touch with your people, put you in touch with mine, so we can cross-reference. But I think that has to be the driving force, because otherwise it's you know.
COVID demonstrations, protests, hit us pretty hard. You know, prior to all that, we actually had community officers that were assigned to certain communities, and that was their job, to make that connection. And not only just make that connection, but to like other people, other officers, especially command staff and officers that work there, to that too. COVID shot a lot of that. Being down 100 officers, definitely. So we're on our way to build back. We know, you know, that the gains we made before COVID and protests are gone. So it's almost like start one for somebody like me who's here at square one. That's not going to be an overnight thing. So we've got to, we're intentionally putting ourselves out there, even though we're short, making an effort to be as different places as we can. Even the officers we bring in now, that are new, we talk to them about, you know, even if you don't live in the city, you work here, we encourage you to play here. And playing here in Lexington, different cultural things you have access to here is unbelievable. So, it's have the community forums and all that, but you know, limited number of people coming. Our officers are taught, you know, while you're out working your beat, you can do personal things. You can go pick up milk to take home or whatever. And that's all part of it. Get in the grocery store and walk in there and can't spend a whole shit in there. Or even 30 minutes of it, but you can go in there and if somebody asks you a question, you can talk to them. And that's how we got to build that connection back. Because I think some of the things that happen have dehumanized police. And this is not the time for us to shut down. This is time for us to open up and show that, yeah, we're a part of the community just like you.
And just so you know, I mean, the whole distrust, I mean, it's, nobody's saying, you know, speak out, you know, about improprieties or policies or procedures that don't show an equitable face. Is not saying the whole institution. Because we know, you know, they're biased. People everywhere, they're biased. Police officers, you know, they're, so we know it's not everybody. We know they're bad officers. But what also erodes their trust, because it's like the transparency process is when bad officers do things, good officers don't speak up. So then it further creates a divide. So when you bring stuff like surveillance, and then people have their own ideas of, you know, because everything is surveillance, oh, now you're, you know, big brother, whatever, and don't understand, you know, it's a license plate reader or whatever. So, you know, it's, I guess it's just really incumbent upon, you know, because, I mean, you know, I've called you a couple times, I got to pull up a text, you know, like, just let you know, because, you know, I'm still in that mode, like, hey, by myself, and you talk me through it, and so I think it's just trying to figure out a way to get back in the community, get with some of these organizations, kind of have talk sessions, forums, and I think just creating a level of understanding that would, like you say, slowly, but, you know, build that trust and that understanding, you know, because, you know, you're right, COVID it's made it even worse because, you know, isolation and the fear, maybe stuff you see naturally, you know, may not even be something that's relevant to us here, but we know it happens. You know, I got stories, you know, me being put up here, so I think that community, transparency, just doing whatever you can, you know, to push to rail against this trust and say, you know, it's like the child has been adopted and, you know, they've had a hard life and they're doing everything they can because they want you to get them whatever. The good parents that, no, I'm gonna stick this out. So I think that's what, you know, I'll return. I think you're a good man, so I think, you know, that's what they're.
We're doing our best. I don't want anybody to get alarmed or anything like this, but my whole goal is, I know I'm not going to be chief forever. I'll be 100 pretty soon. I know I'm not going to be chief forever. So that means I got to leave this agency, but I am going to live here forever. So I got to leave this agency in the hands of people in the community I want to live in. And that's how I work and that's how I operate. So,
I'm gonna say something, because I hadn't said anything, just kind of taking all this in, and I'm just kind of reflecting, because it's interesting. I was just out the country the last couple of days, and for the first time I went out the country. As you're entering the plane, instead of handing the boarding pass to the agent to get on the flight, they take a picture and says, board. Never looked at my pass. I thought, wow, that's interesting. Made it over into London. Go through customs. Same thing, take a picture. Welcome to London. I was like, that's interesting. My passport is in my hand. Come back in the country yesterday. Go through customs to come back into the States. Normally put my boarding pass up there, you know, we do kind of a special thing where they kind of research to make it easy to get back in. This time, walk up to the thing, take a picture, boom, welcome to the States. Never looked at my my passport, and I thought, they know, right? They know by my face now that I was supposed to have been on that flight, came into the country, came back into our country, and so now I'm listening to this and thinking, God, this is happening whether we want it to happen or not. I think the biggest thing is, my humble opinion is, the officers have a tough job, right? Because we need the officers. We need the officers, right? Because there's some folks out there just they ain't trying to do it all right, to be for real, right? We need the officers, and we know that we're all human, right? So as they're trying to make their pitch and try to learn how to explain why they're using this new tool, they're not going to be able to do it by themselves. And I had these personal conversations with my wife, and I'll bring you into my house for a quick minute, because my challenge is our community. And so that means it's up to every last one of us to make the case. So when somebody's pushing back on social media, and you know, now we've heard the truth. We've heard it, right? We've heard the numbers. What's supposed to be the truth. So now the next time we see something on social media and somebody says, well, that's not exactly true. Why don't you go to Lexington KY Police, right, and check out the real numbers? Because people don't show up at the community forums. And I've been in a lot of them, so I know they don't show up. We don't show up, right? We just make excuses. And my dad taught me when I was real young, excuses only satisfy those who make them. Period. Hard stop. So it's going to take each one of us in this community, starting right here, right, to push back. Let's support our officers with the information that they're trying to get out, and it's not easy. The city's going to have to step up. Our officers are going to have to step up. Guess we're going to have to step up. We're going to have to step up. And sometimes that's going to hurt too, because then people going to be pushing back on us. Well, what are you with? Just trying to do the right thing, because the truth sometimes hurts. And I just wanted to say that just because of my experience the last 5 days, thinking, wow, they never looked at my plane ticket, although I was supposed to have been on both planes going in and out of this country. Just
he had a presentation. I don't know if you want to say it. You want to say it?
Is there anything, I was going to say, is there anything left, Jimmy?
There's no. The only thing is updated, we updated the numbers. The only thing we did, those are on the transparency page also. I just put those in this morning just to have fresh numbers, but once again, those are updated every Monday on our transparency page, and those remain there.
Once we get the 100 in place, and we know that's where they're going to stay, their locations that we put on our webpage, and that'll be updated quarterly, because they are portable, but we haven't. The only reason we moved some this time, the 25, was because people found them, kept destroying them. So that, so if that happened, or something similar, you know, it turns out that the place we put it isn't the most promising place. And that'll be updated quarterly on our webpage as well.
I appreciate the safeguards. I think that's part of the educating community, that is safeguards on both sides, safeguards. The police are being monitored as well. When you type in the keys, you know, that adds some type of, makes us feel a bit better about being in that kind of state. So I appreciate those safeguards. And if you're going to make more, I think you should share them as well, because I'm sure what it looks like now is probably not going to look like in 5 years. You know?
One of the things ACLU asked us about was, you know, about other agencies and their policy. We don't have any control over that. We gave them people to reach out to. They could have them. International Association of Chiefs of Police, Kentucky Association of Chiefs of Police, Kentucky League of Cities. They all have model policies for police departments. So we've asked them, we took them to them, and have them look at creating model policies for other agencies around the country to follow. Also, legislature is looking at it. sure we're doing things the right way and doing what's right for the citizens, making sure everybody's treated as fairly as possible.
And I will say, if y'all don't mind, you know, I appreciate the chief and the other chiefs and commander coming to talk about the flock system, and I appreciate y'all listening to and asking questions about the product and the policy. I would just ask y'all to continue to look at the policy. If y'all see or something in it that we need to address, if you have some recommendations, I think the police department is open to it, because as we continue to roll out the expansion of these flock cameras, we're going to continue to have and hear public sentiment and discard towards it. And the way that I can continue to continue to support it is making sure that we got a policy in place that protects the people in our community. And I think, you know, with the focus that this commission has and the lens in which y'all are looking at items and issues, that y'all can add valuable feedback to make sure that we got a policy that we can all stand up on and support. So I don't think we're expecting anything today, but as y'all have the policy and we update it and we continue to get presented as this rolls out, because I think there might be some things that may become evident once we have 100 cameras in place that aren't evident with just 25. And I think we're going to need that continued additional set of eyes on it and input in regards to the policy.
Do you have a timeline right now when the next update? Or no?
For on the cameras?
On the cameras.
Probably be 3 months, is what their time is.
That would be for, to have them started to install, but trying to get this quickly as we can early in January to get a presentation on some of the other information that's coming up.
Yeah, I think Councilmember Lim asked, once the first camera's installed, then we give an update, so that would come up as soon as we check.
Yeah, that's going to be important, because I think with the incoming council members, they're probably going to be waiting on that presentation. And I think that may be an opportunity to continue to put this in perspective, let people know that it's a tool, it's a license plate reader, not surveillance. These are the policies, these are the guardrails. So I think that's a good question. But I think it's when before that first camera takes place.
And if you got questions when we leave here, reach back out to us. We've had positive engagements with folks that are more in support of it. It may still not be in support, but we've got a lot of positive feedback that's helped guide us down this path. So this isn't a police thing, this isn't us thing. So to make sure we're doing it right.
Any further questions?
Thank you all.
Thank you for your time.
Does it say hours on there? Okay, that was omitted, so that was the only correction that was brought out to me. Should be 24 hours in advance of a regular scheduled meeting. Make sense to you? So since you had time to review it and did not make me aware of any other, corrections, I have a motion to approve as just amended with the hours.
I'll make a motion to approve these bylaws with the amendment of adding the word hours on page 2.
Okay, have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the bylaws have been approved. 12, 7, 22. What time is it? 4:56 I have. Committee assignments, I sent that out, right? Now, I don't know if it needs to have That's my assignment. But I wanted to bring it out just to make sure so we can finalize it today. If anybody's had a change of mind about an assignment that they originally had, I know Reggie, I wanted to ask you to be sure. I can see that you assigned it for 3 of you. That's housing and gentrification. law enforcement, and racial equity.
Wait, we don't have a copy. It's in the email. We don't have a copy.
It's not in this package. It's
You emailed it.
here if you want to.
I think I saw it. I thought it was something different.
How many again were on? How many on there?
Four.
I think I'm gonna have it. So much people on the education. I think already. Our goal was to have some time to meet to, for the committees to get together. Good?
Yeah, everything else is full, so I'll just stay where needed.
All right, David does not require any of council approval, so wasn't I? Well, we usually stop at 5, so our plan was to, after we adjourn, get together in the committee. So let's see if we can do it in 2 minutes then. As we start. All right. So do I have a motion to adjourn, please?
Make motion.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, I see this on here, did you?
What did I do?
It's a chair nomination. Did you do that earlier?
The bylaws say we have to approve the chair nomination for the subgroups. I thought. So do we have it, but I don't know that we have the chairs picked yet for our subgroups.
No, that's what I thought that's what we were going to do to get together to start that process. I didn't think the flock of presentation from this one. Go ahead.
Do we need to make a motion then to have a continuance?
Yes. Yeah, we do.
Make a motion to have a continuance for the nomination of the chair.
Can we do it via email? Because you can appoint, I mean, I think the bylaws say that you appoint the chair of the work group. So you can appoint them, and then can we just agree through email, and then we can start working to
email.
meet?
No,
No?
no.
You can. So
I'll let you go.
we're out another month before we can meet.
So you can't conduct business via email. And if you're approving the chairs of the subcommittees, you're conducting business.
It says the chair of each working group shall be selected by the chair of the commission and approved by the commission as a whole. Each working group member shall serve as one.
Do you have to have the presence of a chair in order for the working groups to meet? Is that a prerequisite or?
No, I don't
You just
think
have to
you
have
do.
the quorum of the
Committee.
Like in other words, the working groups could come together and meet, but you can have that in the absence of a chair, in the absence of a chair, correct?
Well, as long as you got quorum to conduct
As
it.
long as there's a quorum and there's an understanding on who's leading the meeting.
Right.
Well, to help me along in my role as chair in selection, I don't necessarily feel like I want to select. May I ask, may I go through each of the committees and ask if there's someone that's interested in serving as chair?
Mr. Chair, I would recommend that the working groups, if, you can meet in the absence of a chair, is to have the working groups come together in some type of forum, as long as we follow the open meeting policy, and at that point, work through deciding who should lead or who should be the chair of each group, and then come back to you and submit those. And Of course, it won't be final until it's voted, but that would be a
Well, that's kind of what I was,
recommendation.
I thought we would do it.
2 minutes.
Yeah, well, not into 2 minutes, but I thought that would be much more than time.
I think it's gonna be a little hard in 2 minutes.
Oh, yeah, I know.
And our
about
2
it.
minutes is
Done in
already
2 minutes,
gone.
but I don't know.
You can call a special meeting, and we can do it over Zoom.
So, can the work groups meet?
You have to adopt a meeting schedule,
Right, so,
so we would have to call a special meeting to adopt a meeting schedule for each group.
Right.
And, yeah, so, yeah, I understand, so it's a lot different than what most of us are used to.
no, and I understand all that, I'm just like, now we're out another month.
Well, not necessarily if we have a call a special meeting.
And you can do special meeting.
Yep.
Are you all amenable to a special meeting and call those?
Yes.
Sure.
So make a motion to call a special meeting.
Okay, can I have this
You
amendment?
don't have that.
You don't have, okay. I don't have
You're the
to
chair.
do that.
Yeah, we call a special meeting.
All right, Ms. Brown, you and I will coordinate a special meeting. And the special, and for selection of chairs.
And we just need 24 hours.
And selection of and voting on the chairs, all right? That is our.
Well, and a meeting and
Meeting
a
schedule,
schedule,
meeting schedule.
and all that has to be public, determined and made public.
Yeah.
Proper notification was like 28, 24.
I gotta pick up my kids. So you put
All
the
right.
kids out on the
I have
street, you
a-
don't get them.
Do we have a motion adjourned? Give me a motion adjourned.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Did you do that already?
I did, but.
Okay.
That's what I thought.
Real quick.
Second, I second.
All right, all in favor? Opposed? All right, thank you. Happy holidays, everyone.